Alô, boa tarde a todos, bom dia a todos, boa noite aos que estão fora aí do Brasil. Queria dar as boas-vindas para mais uma sessão aqui da Voitto, onde teremos hoje um convidado especial. Estamos falando sobre essa web series chamada Implementation of Lean Culture, e nós estamos falando sobre como implementá-la em lugares totalmente diferentes, com níveis de resistências diferentes, culturas e etc. Então, antes de começar hoje, nós vamos chamar a Bárbara aqui para a tela para ela nos dar os primeiros anúncios. Bom dia, Bárbara.
Olá, bom dia, pessoal. Muito boa tarde para todo mundo. Bom, vou aqui primeiro apresentar alguns assuntos complementares para todo mundo ter ainda mais conhecimentos extras. O primeiro deles é que se você entrar aqui no nosso manual de bordo, você vai ter acesso ao resumo do livro Empresas Feitas para Vencer, do Jim Collins. Então, é uma ótima oportunidade para você ter aí acesso a esse livro de uma forma gratuita e muito prática do resumo dele ali, né? Além disso, o artigo também, Cultura Organizacional, como implementar na sua empresa para gerar resultados. Então, conteúdos bem legais para você também continuar desenvolvendo o seu crescimento. Além disso, convidar então vocês a acessarem aqui o nosso manual de bordo, lá tem todas as informações sobre todos os quadros da Voitto, não só esse, mas também os nossos outros episódios ali, o que a gente já aprendeu até agora, e também convidar vocês a participarem de forma ativa aqui na nossa live, deixar o seu like, fazer perguntas, participar aqui com a gente. As perguntas vão ser feitas no final e pode fazer em português também, que a gente faz aqui o arranjo para passar para o nosso convidado, que hoje é internacional.
Muito obrigado, Bárbara. Eu queria dizer só, o nosso convidado de hoje vem de um país de 3 milhões de habitantes, um país pequeno, mas que eu já estive lá várias vezes, conheci esse nosso convidado. Ele se associou ao Roncha, o Roncha.org é uma organização de ex-alunos da Toyota, de vários países, e nós estivemos em alguns países europeus e do leste europeu, onde eu conheci esse jovem empreendedor. Naquela época, ele era um engenheiro numa empresa cliente nossa. O nome dele é Vidas Petraitis, da Lituânia. Ele é graduado em administração de empresas e possui um MBA executivo da Harvard, aqui dos Estados Unidos. Ele também estudou no Reino Unido, na Inglaterra e na Noruega. Fala várias línguas e ele iniciou a carreira naquela empresa que faz aquele chocolate, o MM, que todo mundo gosta. E foi lá que a gente se conheceu. E nós temos trabalhado juntos há mais de 10 anos. Então, ele dirigiu diversos departamentos como executivo em área de operações, gestão de projetos, vendas e marketing, até logística, suprimento e etc. E ele estava comandando um grupo de 27 agentes Lean em uma grande corporação lá na Lituânia, e hoje ele atualmente é o presidente e CEO da Nortus, que é uma empresa grande de consultoria nos Bálticos e na Europa Oriental e Central. Então, ele já trouxe vários grupos conosco para as nossas missões de desenvolvimento lá no Japão, lá na Toyota, e hoje a gente vai querer perguntar detalhes sobre qual que é a diferença cultural entre países. Será que ela é tão importante, ela é tão crucial assim numa implementação Lean? Então, por favor, vamos dar nossas boas-vindas ao Vidas Petraitis. Vidas, how are you doing, Vidas? Welcome to our Brazilian Live. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Sammy. Thank you for invitation. It's a big honor to be with you guys and to share today some of the experience I experienced in my life. But first of all, I want to say that I'm happy to be even virtually with Brazilian friends. That was like almost 8 years ago, the first and the last time I was in Brazil. So we were eating like cascaria twice a day for a week. Picanha, waiting till the end of the meal. Once they're bringing the best piece of meat for us in the restaurants we visited. So it was a great experience. And actually, last year, December, we had with the whole team to come to Brazil for 2 weeks, for a holiday, traveling around. But unfortunately, with all the pandemics, we could not make that. But we postponed, our trip. See what happens. So Brazil is our number one destination farther on.
That's great. In Vidas, there are so many questions about the cultural differences between countries, and there will be even more that will come in this chat. So I just invite everybody to participate via chat with their questions that will be answered right next. But there's one that already arrived here. Which are the cultural differences among Central and Eastern Europe countries that can make the lean application diverse from other places around the world? Well, is there anything that you find it's unique in Central and Eastern Europe?
There's like a good phrase. I don't remember the lady who told that, but she's saying like that. Always remember that you are absolutely unique as everyone else. So at the end of the day, we are thinking that we're very unique as human beings, as nations and so on. And I think there are differences. For sure there are. But at the end of the day, I think once you are turning to the individual, everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be supported by a team member. Everybody wants to think about how to improve within their careers, or overall, let's say, within an organization. So I think there are differences, and you can find those differences through the different countries and nations. In north of Europe, might be people would be a bit more planning, discussing before they do some of the things, In southern of the Europe, maybe they would be more, straightforward, going to the action and so on. So there are differences, but on the other hand, I believe more on organizational culture than national culture. Even though, myself coming up, from Lithuania, which is relatively a small country here in Baltics, where we've got independence, 30 years ago, but you can find the same Lithuanians working in different organizations, which represent very different culture from each other. So how it might be, like that in one organization you find people who are, I don't know, maybe they are so much committed, result-oriented, like with the structures and systems and everything like that. And on the other organization, you find the same people from the same country, but behaving totally differently, which is more important, maybe the relationship, more soft things and so on. So I think, that organizational culture is much stronger than the national culture at the end of the day.
Very good. And that is interesting because I remember we were in Japan maybe 4 years ago or so, and there was somebody there who was a very high executive from Toyota who said the same thing. He said, it doesn't matter where Toyota is, wherever it is in the world, the culture is the same. Now, in Japan, you see a company that supplies to Toyota has so much difference in terms of cultural differences between Toyota and this other company that is in the same neighborhood. Good point.
And I would like maybe Sami to add as well, on your point, because, once you look through the model of the organization, once you want to make a transformation within an organization, I remember my studies in Harvard Business School, so they were saying like that there are like 5 dimensions or 5 areas where you have to think about if you want to transform organization for a better performance. So one of them is structures, systems. You have to think about, functions, organizational structures. Do they fit for the strategy of organization? Another one is people in terms of skills, in terms of competences, and mainly about skills. We're talking in this organization. Do we have the proper skills to perform our strategy? Then we're talking about processes and work, which is about best practices, instructions, and all that kind of stuff. And the last, and I think one of the hardest one to change, is about culture. So what are our norms, what are our beliefs, what are our values, which are most of the time they're hidden. We don't understand what happens within an organization, but something happens around. And culture is affected by a leadership style. So actually, how leaders behave on a daily basis. Actually, the whole organization, this is a matter of time, they start to copy paste leadership behaviors. And this is how you transform the culture, which is not easy to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And you know that just recently we are having this pandemics, and I hope Lithuania is doing much better than we are here in Brazil or in the US. But this has affected a lot of the plans. So it's coming with a lot of economical instability. So some companies are resistant to change just because of that uncertainty. So what do you think, or you have any tips to help organizations to make their culture a little bit more receptive to the lean philosophy?
You mean like what would be the tips for the company to change
Yes,
their own behaviors and cultures?
yes, especially now because of these people are getting a little bit more protective, and there's a list of excuses why I cannot implement lean because we don't know what the future will be, and it's so unstable, and people are getting even more resistant against change.
Yeah, I think, I would say that I don't even understand if we get to that point of view, saying, that we will become resistant to change. I think we have to change. As we have Darwin's who said like years ago, yeah, not the strongest, but the ones who adapt or the most flexible to change survive. So I would say, like in that kind of situation, lean should be bringing some kind of competences or infrastructure within organization to help to go through the changes. So once we are talking about that, what do we talk about? Overall lean as a system. So we have to create a system where people would see the problems immediately. And sometimes, when there is a good time, so we are saying like, oh, people don't want to change because everything is fine and so on. And you remember, Sammy, our conversations talking about a burning platform, how to create a burning platform, within an organization that people would be willing to change. So here we are. For more than a year, we already have a burning platform. And I think this situation just pushes all of us for a change. Another point, if we coming back to the lean system, so we say that we have to create a system where it would reveal the problems immediately. But on the other hand, we have to have a system of people who are willing and capable to solve those problems. So I think definitely, in this situation, lean is one of the great systems or cultures, even or philosophies, you can call it, who are helping for companies to survive, and not even to survive, but to take the benefits out of those difficult times. Because you can address or you can direct your whole organization system and people towards something where you can solve the problems, where people are motivated to identify the problems, that they are not hiding the problems within organizations. They are even erasing the problems within organizations, and they're capable, the most important, they're capable to solve those problems.
Good point, because in Toyota, they always say you have to bring problems to the surface. And this is great. I think it's, if you don't see problems, you cannot solve them. But a lot of companies and people, depending on their levels, of course, they are very afraid of bringing problems to surface. How do you think they should do to lose that fear? What needs to be in place so there's no fear of bringing problems instead of hiding them?
I think there are several points regarding that. So we have to ask the question why people are afraid, to raise the problems, or even they are willing to delegate the problems to the other departments or to the other colleagues. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think, one of the questions, because we have the culture that you are getting, not a reward from raising the problem, but you are getting some kind of punishment, like a verbal one or by a bonus system or something like that. So you create a system where people trying to hide the problems in that kind of way. So you have to create like a safe environment where people would be motivated, where they would be, let's say, recognized if they are bringing up as many problems as it possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like rating problems, but bringing more as it possible, that all of us would be capable, then afterwards to solve those problems. My example would be simply, imagine yourself or myself, going to the doctor and asking the doctor that I have some problems with my health and I don't know what kind of problems I have. The doctor helps me to identify those problems and he says, Vidas, so here they are. And now I say to the doctor, let's do not tell anyone what we have revealed about my health problems. Let's forget that we had this meeting. I have never seen you before. So that would sound, a bit stupid. You want to know that if you don't understand what your problems are coming for, you want to know that the doctor would reveal that, identify clearly as it possible, those problems, that we could solve it and you would be healthier. We behave differently within organizations. It's the same. If you hide the problems and if you hide them even more, so your organization will be weaker.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And there is a question, and this comes from Viviane Vasconcelos. She's asking, Vidas, talking about soft skills. Now, there might be a lot of techniques, lean techniques, but she's asking specifically on soft skills that are crucial to the success of the implementation of lean. Is there any that you would highlight as one of the main soft skills?
For sure, definitely you could name quite a lot of them, which are necessary. But I will name just like 3 of them. And I think you guys, maybe you have already heard that before. So I would talk about humility. I would talk about courage and continuous improvement. So even you remember Sammy, saying, you have to be humble and courageous to continuously improve. So imagine, what do we mean by humble? We mean that, we want our people, even though that they are maybe already good, with the work, what they're doing within the organization, every time they would challenge themselves, asking what could be done better. Like a sportman or a sportwoman, if you won like Brazilian national competition, maybe you want to, to get into the South American competition. Once you won, that competition, you want to get the World Cup. If you get the World Cup, maybe to the Olympics. It depends on the sports you're doing. But sometimes, once we are turning back to the companies, challenging for the greater objectives or goals, for some of the people are frustrating. And say, why you are raising, the bar every time for us? But if you compare that with the sports, so then it doesn't make sense, yeah? Because every sportman or every sportwoman wants to raise the bar to get, high achievements. And if we are talking about courage, so courage is about that we want to enhance people within an organization, that they would be arising as many problems as it possible. And the biggest danger is within an organization if you're coming to a certain department, a certain organization, and if you're asking people, do you have any problems? And if people are answering, that we don't have any problems, so then this is a big problem, actually. Why? Because it seems that their bar is too low. And the third one, continuous improvement, once we're talking. So which means, if you think that you're already the best, if you don't have that humility, and if you think, that you don't have any problems, so there is nothing to improve. And I think nowadays it's very risky if you don't see any improvements to be made around you or your teams or your organization, because the world is changing so fast in terms of everything, in terms of the skills required, in terms of processes and everything. And if you get into an organization which thinks that they're already the best and which thinks that they are already that they don't have any problems, so I think they're in a big problem. There's a good statement, by the way, Sami, about that. They're saying like that in 21st century, there is going to be two types of organizations, competitive and closed.
That's a good statement. Actually, I didn't know you were going to talk about courage, humility, and Kaizen. But look at this. This here, I don't know if you can see here, this is exactly what you're talking about. The conjunction of these three elements, the CHK, courage, humility, and Kaizen. So important for us to be successful. But there is one question here from Tiago Souza, which is almost the same as this previous question. But this one is, what are these hard skills, or what are the techniques and tools that are essential to implement lean and to break lower resistance in lean organizations? So what do you think?
Well, I would relate to World Economic Forum. I remember in 2015, they announced what are going to be the main competences or skills globally, required by the companies. And number one was problem solving. The second one, as far as I remember, it was, I think, creativity. And then, 2020 occurred, and I thought, so what is going to be the next, for the next 5 years? Because every 5 years they're announcing those skills, which are going to be the most necessary for the companies. And it's, again, problem solving and creativity. So if we're talking about those skills, so we're talking about problem solving is one of the most important skills which is going to be for the upcoming decade. So this is one point. The second point, I remember like a few years ago, my visit in Japan, and I think Sami maybe wasn't there, but we had like a very interesting executive development mission there. And we had a chance to meet, if I remember, he's a former like a president or vice president of North America Toyota. Very like intelligent guy, and we had a dinner with him together. And he said, during that dinner, he said like, our strategy, one of the strategies in Toyota is to have the best problem solvers in the world. And I thought, what does he mean by that? It didn't make a lot of sense, for me at that time. But now once I'm going, back to what he said, I find a lot of sense with this. Why? Because if we are coming back to my example before I mentioned, we understand that the problem is like a bar set by leadership or by management. It's like a bar or objective or goal. So if you come to the company and you see no problems, so what does it mean? That the objectives or the goals are too low. So leaders, they have to artificially to create problems within an organization, to challenge them, the organization, every time to raise the goal. Yeah? So now the question is what? How many of my teammates or my colleagues are willing and capable to solve those problems? So in other words, how many best problem solvers in the world I have. Because if I can create problems in a positive manner within an organization, or I can challenge the goals every time as a leader, so now this is just a matter of time how many of my classmates are capable and willing to solve those problems.
Excellent. And this is probably one of the top places where people think, I already know how to do that. I don't need to learn anymore because I've been solving problems since I was a little kid. So why do I need to learn a new methodology for that? But it looks like there is a strong emphasis on learning how to do it systematically with a structure and in a scientific way.
But to be honest, Sammy, I'm not sure how about you guys in Brazil, but in Europe, just in a very few countries, they teach kids how to solve problems in the school. For example, in my problem, not even in university, not even in my first companies they solved. Because every time I thought, once you have a problem, you have to think about the problem, how you're going to solve it. Then you make an action plan with responsibles and with the date, timing, and that's it. And I was very surprised when one of my colleagues, he went 2 years ago in Denmark, and he visited quite a lot of schools, universities, hospitals there and so on. And he was surprised why? That even like the kids who are already 10 years old, they have classes of problem solving. They are taught how to solve the problems in a scientific, into methodological way. Because we as a human beings, we don't have that kind of competence, just to solve complex problems within our heads. So it has to be, based on facts. It has to be measurable, like the problem itself, with no junk words, with no junk data. We have to identify the root causes, why that problem has happened based on facts. Then for those root causes, we have also them to check them, in reality, because we are doing some kind of hypothesis for the root cause analysis. We have to double check, are they for real root causes? And if they are real, then we are getting to the action plan, then we are starting to measure the results. If we are successful on that kind of problem solving, then we have to think about how to make that those problems were not going to come back again, which we call standardization. And there are so many companies who are doing that kind of unprofessional firefighting. Not professional, because professionals, once they deal with a fire, they quit with the fire. But unprofessional, which means that we are every time coming back to the same problems again and again. And the last, and I think is also one of the most important, that we do not recognize people for the problem solving. We are giving for our best people the worst problems to solve in organizations, and at the end we don't say thank you for that. Can you imagine? As an athlete, you would be sending your best athlete of your country to Olympic Games, to solve the biggest problem, to jump over the bar, I don't know, to get the gold. And at the end, he or she, if she makes that, you don't give any gold medal, you don't give any recognition, not even thank you. Can you imagine that in sports? I would not imagine. But that happens in organizations every day, actually. And I think this is something we have to think about.
So you're talking about the importance of incentives. But let me ask you, the time is up already, but there is one question I think we should really address, because it's one very frequent question. It's from Ana Luisa saying, Vidas, you mentioned that the team follows the behavior of the leader. But what to do when the leader is not leading, doesn't want to change, is not going the right direction? How do you handle when the leader is not really showing the greatest example for lean implementation? Do you have anything?
Is it the question coming up from the owner of the company or a team member of that leader?
I have no idea, but Ana Luisa is one of the participants here.
I mean, like if it's coming from the owner of the company, so definitely you have to talk with the leader about that kind of behavior, that he or she should shape that behavior toward which is necessary for the organization to create that kind of culture you are willing to create. You know, like if we are talking from the perspective of the team member, you know, like in more advanced organizations, you have those employee engagement surveys, for example, which are anonymous, where you can rank the leaders according to their behaviors. And then the owners of the company, they would see that anonymous survey. So this is one of the points also how you can push, you know, leadership awareness to realize where they are as a leaders, evaluated by the team members. But the company still has to be a bit advanced to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to lose, you know, the hope on that. But if for the long term you see that the leader does not have that awareness of his leadership style, that it does not support the company's strategy, so I think you have just simply to change the company.
Very good. Very direct and objective. We really thank you so much, Vidas, for your participation. I don't know if you have some last words before you leave, and I'll close here with some announcements. Anything else you would like to share before you leave?
You know, just like even though that you guys so far away from the Baltics, but Brazil is one of those destinations where I want to come back again and again. So let's keep strong, let's keep together, and I think this is just a matter of short time when we are going to manage that. So let's maintain with our hope for better, and it's going to come very soon. So wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Vidas. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye bye. E guys, gente, vamos só dar uma recapitulada em coisas muito importantes. Uma delas é a importância da gente ter a humildade, a coragem para conseguir, então, fazer um Kaizen bem feito. A outra que ele mencionou é a importância da gente ter a habilidade de fazer o problem solving, resolver problemas via suas causas raízes. E quando você resolve através da causa raiz, você coloca elementos de padronização para que o problema não retorne novamente. E depois o Yokoten, para que você consiga alcançar ainda mais processos com a mesma solução. Muito importante. A outra parte que seria interessante a gente lembrar é que a humildade e essa postura do líder, ela vai ditar o que os outros vão fazer. Então, se o humilde se o líder é uma pessoa arrogante, provavelmente o pessoal vai começar também a pensar: para que eu preciso aprender mais? O meu próprio líder, eu quero chegar na posição do líder um dia, eu vou copiar exatamente o que o meu líder faz. Então, essa é uma parte essencial. Coragem e humildade para conseguir, então, fazer um Kaizen bem feito. Gente, semana que vem nós vamos ter o Rodolfo Moreno aqui. Rodolfo Moreno é um diretor sênior da Carl Zeiss, que ele está desenvolvendo um novo software que faz o e-Heijunka. A gente vai entender como é que ele está fazendo isso, como é que ele conseguiu fazer com que a Carl Zeiss do México se tornasse o exemplo, até mesmo para a Carl Zeiss da China. Ou seja, o pessoal não está indo comprar lá dos chineses, que é mais barato e etc. Estão começando a oferecer, a competir até mesmo com outras filiais da mesma empresa em regiões da China, que tipicamente sempre foram vistas como as mais baratas e competitivas. Então, ele vai estar aqui conosco contando algumas das histórias aí de como que ele tem implementado. Tá ótimo? Então, nós nos vemos daqui uma semana, sempre terça-feira, às 13h30. Um grande abraço a todos e nos vemos em breve.